So, should we start? Or I guess people
I
are.
think we started, but
Yeah, we did start.
it's not
We
official
we
yet.
we never start, we never finish.
That's true.
God,
God,
it's crazy.
that's all. Waking up is
Hard to do.
hard.
Did they write a song about that? Waking up is hard to do.
Waking up is hard.
Yeah, I think so. Anyway.
See?
Yeah, there's Adam even. Wow. Okay. So I think due to timing for many of us, and we are currently in Thailand and it is blisteringly hot. Is it hot where you are, Stephen? Yeah. And so it's so hot, and we've just turned the fans off.
And it's just sunrise.
And it's just sunrise. So rather than melt in front of you and collapse at the end, we'll go ahead and start. And a few more people may trickle in. But, those of you who tune in regularly know that sometimes we inject a little bit about current events into these talks. And so we're going to try not to do too much of that tonight or this morning, but also to acknowledge that we are filming this just after, 5 or 6 days after the Iranian attack from the United States.
Yeah. By Israel and the United States.
By Israel and the United States. Yeah. And so it's a very complex and deeply troubling time in the world. And as we said last week, one of the things that certainly I feel very, very strongly about is that there is something under all of this that is going to really help, and that is helping now. And that when things collapse at some point, there will be this safety net, in part due to the extraordinary number of people who are turning towards practices like yoga and contemplative practices like meditation and studying Buddhism and the things we talk about. And so the world is in this state, and we are also in our own little worlds, in our states of being. And when we bring a sense of peace and calm into our own little tiny corner of the world, the more of us who do that, the bigger that wave of sort of stability and sanity and what would you call it?
Kindness.
Yeah.
Compassion. Just
the more
communication.
Of that, communication.
The more of it, then
the more of that there is to support the world when it is in a dire place, as it is now, or as it falls apart, as seems to be the case at the moment. And that's why we were all drawn to these practices, in a sense. I mean, if you want to be that way about it and say, it is a time where these practices are needed, not to try to convert people, but to simply allow there to be a ground of awareness that it's always there anyway, but to have a ground of awareness that more and more people are tapping into. So we wanted to just start, as we did last time, by taking a very brief, maybe 3 to 5 minutes of sitting to let things settle within our own bodies, within our own minds, and also to let things settle outside of ourselves in the rooms we're in, and then that sort of filters out. And that's how these practices work. So take a moment and arrange yourself, the body, so you're comfortable. And allow the breath to sink in. And bring your awareness to the sensation pattern of breath, keeping it really, really simple. Breath deep in the body. The sensation of softening the tongue and releasing the palate. Noticing that the tongue and the palate and the jaw, the neck, shoulders, those are places in the body often that we carry tension and hold tension. And simply noticing that, but then also letting the breath, in a way, travel to places in your own body. Tongue, palate, shoulders, jaw, or the face, or the legs, the chest. Places in your body where there is a feeling of tension, a feeling of constriction. And still, this background sense of the breath as it comes and goes is always there. Breathing into sensations of spaciousness. And breathing out the sensation of dropping to earth, plugging in. And from the feeling within the body, the embodied experience of connecting deeply to earth, to others, through the breath, it becomes possible to soften the body, increase the sense of spaciousness within the body. This happens automatically. Finding steadiness, finding spaciousness, finding stability. And in this sense of spaciousness, stability, there are seeds of peacefulness, seeds of connection, seeds of compassion and kindness. And the mind wanders, and then you come back to the breath, allowing the breath to water those seeds of an open heart, of tenderness. Following the breath, the mind wanders, and we come back to the breath. Steady, still and spacious. Letting things be. And then if the eyes are closed, allow them to slowly open. And move the body if needed and get comfortable again. And we offer that sense of stability, that it may truly be of benefit in this troubled times, not only to ourselves, but that it may bring some benefit to others. And so we do this anytime. You can do it for 30 seconds, you can do it for an hour. And it's what we call our practices, obviously.
Yeah. You can actually practice in action, like if you're like kung fu or even driving a car. You don't want to close your eyes for your meditation,
if you're driving.
But you can fill your heart and be more alert and mindful. You can even see other drivers eventually. That's very advanced. See other drivers as humans, but.
And one of the things that happens when you do this, and when you do this in the world like that, is that it opens this sense of connection to others. And we've talked about this many times, but that you allow yourself to be slightly vulnerable and open and trusting and looking into the eyes of other people, not in a creepy way where you're like looking, but just really truly looking and seeing the others whom you may run into, not necessarily people you know even, but not just glancing past them, but just giving a nod and letting that sense of being connected be part of the fabric of being. Some of you know I had an operation a few weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, and it was very funny to be in a hospital setting, being wheeled around in this big hospital in a wheelchair. And I started the whole thing was very much a practice. And I'm doing great now, but looking as I was being wheeled around through this very busy hospital, I was noticing, a lot of people were on their phones, but many people were just, they'd see a wheelchair coming and they'd, look away in a sense, divert the gaze so as not to create embarrassment. So I was looking and noticing, nobody wants to look at someone in a wheelchair. And then as I was being wheeled by, this guy was being wheeled in the opposite direction on a gurney. So he was actually lying down, and he and I looked at each other, and it was just this moment of like, hello, here we are. And both of us just, had this great moment, this big smile, and that was life. And it felt like it got passed along. And that's what we do with this kind of practice, is that it feeds something within us that, I wasn't trying to grab everyone's attention when I was being wheeled by, but when someone did happen to look, there was like 200 times more oomph in the feeling I had of kind of, wow, this is connecting.
You're not alone.
I'm not alone. And also, this is cool. Let's connect.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, the topic for tonight is how to succeed in yoga without really trying. And in a way, that's part of it. A big part of it is these practices that allow us to be with things as they are. And we came up with that title. Those of you who are older or American may know that there was a book that was many, many years ago written called How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. And that was sort of a satirical book. And we thought of this because in a class, and this happens often, people come and say, oh, this practice, I'm just not getting anywhere with it. And, this feeling of not being good enough or not succeeding, not getting what they're there for. And a student the other day coming and saying, I've been meditating and meditating and meditating, doing what you're saying. And I've set aside an hour each day to meditate. And I just don't think I'm being very successful at it because, like, halfway through, 30 minutes in every time, I notice
that my mind is wandering.
Yeah. and it's been wandering the whole time.
And that's actually, wow, you actually noticed.
Yeah.
That's what the practice.
But his question was, well, should I just then stop meditating? Because should I do the rest of the hour that I've set aside to do it? Because if I do the rest of the hour, isn't that like feeding a bad habit? Because we know that all I really do is my mind wanders. And that's one way of looking at it. But
yeah, you could say that about any of our practices. But the fact that he noticed is quite amazing.
And even if he, even if we practice and it's like the bell is about to ring or the alarm that you've set is about to go off and you've got 10 seconds left and suddenly you go, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be practicing yoga. Even if that happens, that's pretty advanced. So what the practices bring us is this capacity to drop out of what we conceptualize as things and get into the flow of things. For Ashtanga people, we're prone to think, well, there is a goal in mind. And many of us come to yoga with, something, I want to get enlightened, or I want to get this, or I want to do these poses. And that might get you in the door.
Yeah, if you had no goal, why would you even start?
Well, because you just were curious.
Oh, well, what's it like? Yeah. Even that's
Yeah.
But what happens in the yoga world, obviously, is it's almost an epidemic of, I've got to get my leg behind my head, and put my feet on the top of my head, and all of these from all different angles. And that is a sign of success. And then you'll get a certain merit or stars you can wear. And any of those things that you do achieve, they turn out to be very impermanent. And often in the grasping at them, that's where injury comes, or frustration, or jealousy, or anger, or pride, or selfies, at least, if nothing else.
Yeah. And really, when we look at what we would consider to be successful in yoga is a sense of freedom from that kind of thinking, a sense of the freedom that one feels when there is, when your own idea of self has softened and you start to merge with your own background, with the process around you. And one of the ideas we thought of talking about here is the idea that in Buddhism, and it's also in yoga, but it's not necessarily used in this terminology, but in Zen practice and in general Buddhist practices or insight meditation practice, there is this idea of form and emptiness being form, the Heart Sutra. And that's a confusing terminology for many of us. What do you mean? Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. And a terminology that is easier, in a sense, to understand for some of us. Certainly for me, something that really helped me to have a little more assimilation of that is the idea of conceptual thinking that would be called, or conceptual ideas, that is the content level that we live on.
Mm-hmm.
And those are things like your thoughts and your emotions and your perceptions and all of that. And then the process level, so the content level and the process level. And that the content level would be much more the form, and the process level would be much more the sense of awareness, that process is this openness, the freedom, the awareness that is always there, that you talk about as, running down the river and sliding in suddenly, rather than...
Yeah, and they were called, and that process level is the buddhi, is Sanskrit term, which means the intelligence. And then, and of course, part of the content level is your theories about buddhi, but then you get to look at that, that's, so that it keeps flowing, it keeps sliding into the present moment of, this is a way of observing what is actually happening. Because generally we don't pay that close attention to, or we pay very close attention to some little particular and important thing, and but then we're not paying attention to the deeper feelings in the body, how the breath is, we don't see the background. We can just focus on that one thing, but superficially.
And this idea of the background and the awareness is, then as we sink into that, it becomes something like perhaps that student had in that moment of realizing, I'm terrible, I'm not successful at my sitting practice, where everything has kind of opened up and it's no longer even an awareness of inherent freedom, awareness, spaciousness. There is an embodied experience of it, but it's beyond words, beyond concept.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was a helpful way of kind of understanding this idea of that beyond content, that visceral feeling of awareness that is not mine being and me being aware of something, but this ocean of awareness that we're part of, and there's these moments where we snap back into ourselves just chronically, but it goes beyond that. And what really starts to then help us understand this kind of thing often are stories or myths or metaphors,
poems, poetry, art. Yeah.
Art.
Yeah, which reminds us of, there's an interesting story. and it's called and it's actually two little chapters out of the Mahabharata, which is the book which is describing, the Bhagavad Gita is just a little blip in the Mahabharata. And it's one of the longest books. I don't actually know anyone who's actually read the entire thing, or people who read the entire thing get multiple PhDs just for having tried. But there's this one story kind of in the early middle of the text called the Yaksha Prashna. And prashna are questions, and questions are very important, like who, what, why, when, where, And the yaksha means that which is right in front of your eyes. And the yakshas are treated in these stories as actual beings that are right in front of your eyes that you're ignoring, because you always ignore that which is your immediate experience, which is the yaksha. And so this is finally a very compassionate yaksha who decides to help the 5 brothers, who are the Pandavas, improve their skill in dealing with things. And so it's a way of imparting teachings to them. And let's see, what happened? Oh, should we go into the story?
Sure.
The story is like, and it's one of those stories that it could take weeks to get into the details. But anyway, the 5 brothers, these are the good guys. They're the nice guys. And the eldest of the brothers is Yudhishthir. He's the hero. And he's
he's Arjuna's brother.
He's Arjuna's big brother.
Yeah.
His older brother.
And Arjuna from the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, Arjuna is Krishna's friend who drives the chariot. But the 5 brothers are out in the woods.
We haven't told how they got there with the giving away the
why they got
right.
stuck in the woods. That I always forget.
Yeah.
But, anyway, who was it that had the gambling?
Duryodhana. Yeah, so they got
cheated.
They got duped into a game, or Yudhishthir got duped into a game of some sort that was a game of dice.
Yeah, where he bet his kingdom.
and so Duryodhana was their cousin, and he had been longing to be in charge and to be the one in power. And he was sort of the epitome of the human conditions, like envy and greed and power and
strength.
Yeah, animosity and so, and all of these characters, they represent each one of us.
Yes, we have our own inner Duryodhana, but in the world today, there are the occasional extreme politicians.
And Duryodhana had tried a couple of other ways of getting, because he felt he deserved the kingdom, and the Pandavas, who were the quote-unquote good guys, and they were good guys, they were the ones, their family, the Pandava brothers, they were the ones who were getting the kingdom. And so Duryodhana got his uncle, which was actually the uncle of all of the guys because they were all related, to make these dice. And the uncle made these dice that were made out of the bones of their ancestors. And they were, kind of magical dice. And the uncle who made them had this power.
The uncle was like
he wanted.
He was very bad.
Yeah.
I will resist any parallels to modern groups.
Thank you.
And, the uncle was bad.
And he wanted Duryodhan, the bad guys, to win.
Yeah.
And so he made these dice, and they were beautiful. And they got, so the Yudhishthira got trapped into this game and said, okay, well, we'll play, and it'll be the roll of the dice who wins the kingdom. And of course, the uncle was there, and when the dice rolled, his magical powers could make the dice do whatever he wanted.
Yeah.
And so he had a rigged election or a rigged exchange of power so that Duryodhan became the head of the kingdom.
Yeah.
So that was the precursor that I thought was cool because it gives you the reason why they
And then
were
the
out
five
there.
Pandavas, they had to go for various reasons into the forest. And they had various tasks. Anyway, they were out in the forest doing their work, but they all got very thirsty because they were in a part of the forest where there was no water. They were slightly uphill from things. And then they decided, well, we need to get some water. So they got some water containers. They didn't have plastic in those days, but they had
Thankfully.
these bags. Yeah. And they sent the youngest brother off to, down to, just go downhill because water goes downhill. They were very smart. They figured that out. And down and deep into the jungle, there were no traces of humans. So it was a very beautiful area. It was just, birds and animals, and then there's beautiful ponds of water and, rivers that were conjoining. And it was like exactly what they needed. So the little brother, his job was to get some water and bring it back to the others. And he went down and he saw the water and goes, wow. And he was extremely thirsty. And so he rushes down and he starts to, and he walks into the water and he starts to reach down to drink some. And a voice said, stop. Before you take a drink, please just answer my questions. This is my water. And there was actually a crane, or what appeared to him to be a large crane, who was actually the first form that the divine Yaksha took. And he says, before you take a drink, just answer my questions. And if you answer my questions, then you can have some water. And the young boy, well, he was too thirsty. He said, it's just a dumb crane, and he scooped up the water and he dropped dead.
On the spot.
On the spot. He just went boom. He was dead. And so after too long a time, he didn't come back, and Yudhishthira then sent the next one in the line, who was also young, and he sent him off to look, and the same thing occurred. He came into this he saw the younger brother saw his youngest brother lying there, and he didn't, you could tell he was kind of dead, but he thought, and but he was so thirsty, and then he started to drink, and the Yaksha said, wait, before you drink, just answer my question, because it's my, this is all my water, and it's believable because cranes, this was like and he couldn't wait, and he just started to scoop up some water, and as soon as it touched his lips, he passed out and died. And then the next one, I think Arjuna was sent. He came back, and after a long time, Arjuna went, and Arjuna is, our great hero, and he he went before Bhima went, and then he got down there, and he one was about to drink and he got pissed off, and he got quite surprised, and this voice said, "Stop." And he was like, "How dare you stop me?" And so he started to, and he was an excellent archer, and apparently he just started shooting because the voice seemed to be coming out of the sky. And he just started shooting arrows all around. He said, "How dare anyone, do this?" He lost it. He wasn't being very mindful. And he reached down and he took a scoop of water and he passed out dead. And his bows and arrows, and then literally the big brother, who was Bhima, who was a huge, super strong. Bhima is represented in, by the way, yogis, when you look at your feet, there are 5, these are the 5 brothers, and the big toe, that's Bhima. And at all meals, he would eat at least half the food, and but he was much bigger than all of them put together. So get your big toe grounded. Anyway, so Bhima also went, and he was fighting, and he also couldn't resist, and he didn't wait to answer and he dropped dead. So the 4 brothers are dead, and this is so early in the book it would run Mahabharata. And then after a long time, Yudhishthira, who's just said, "What is going on?" And so he was wondering, and he starts walking into this beautiful part of the forest, totally away from traces of humans and civilization. And he is noticing, the beauty of it, the water, and he gets down and he sees his 4 younger brothers lying there dead, and he's like overwhelmed. His heart just breaks, and tears start to come from his eyes, and he looks, and then he hears this voice, and it's the Yaksha again saying, "Wait, before you drink, just to answer my questions." And he starts to notice, the voice is coming from above. And this is where the Yaksha no longer appears as a crane, but it appears more as a traditional Yaksha, which is, and all Yaksha means is right before your eyes. But the traditional ones that are, because they're divine creatures, they can be very big and scary. And so this Yaksha was as big as a large palm tree, and way up in the sky, and was radiant with like light. And so...
And people see the yakshas as fierce and ferocious because they often have that, that face that you love.
Yeah, I won't narrate it.
You can do it. Yeah.
And a beautiful thing about where we are currently is that there are statues of yakshas at most temples, and they're guarding the doors of the temples. And they can be, and this is as tall as a palm tree, which can be tall. And Yudhishthira is like, he's crying, and but he then notices, and he starts to notice that, well, his brothers weren't killed but they weren't poisoned by the water. He went through all the theories, but they weren't poisoned because they must have died through some strange thing, because a simple trick that Duryodhana would have done would be to poison the water. That was one of his suspicions. This was the evil king had set this whole thing up to kill the family. And then, so he actually starts to talk to the Yaksha. And the Yaksha says, "Just answer my simple questions. And then you can drink, and you can take as much water as you want." And so this is where it started.
There were, 125, 100.
Yeah,
or so.
120 questions or so. It's like, answer my questions. You know.
And an interesting part of it, I think, is that the yaksha, the symbolism of the yaksha, and in this case, the yaksha, we later found out, turns out to be Yudhishthir's father, who is Yama, the god of death, who's come down to actually do some teachings, right?
Yeah, the god of death is actually, Yama
Yeah,
is actually
he's a good
he's all
guy.
over the place. He might even be nearby.
And and the idea of a yaksha is that they are the ones who are sort of, because they are representing what is right before your eyes, they're representing something that is the process level that we were talking about. They are representing emptiness. They're representing freedom and interconnectedness.
They're representing pure awareness of what's actually happening. And so when it's happening right in front of your eyes, you'll make a theory about it. Oh, what's happening? That's just, that's a bus and that's a dead body. But you're not looking what's really happening. The whole thing is all of the feelings and sensations, all of the prana that is arising, and then all of the thoughts that are arising. Okay, they are appearing right in front, and we ignore that as efficiently as we can. We become very skilled at ignoring it. And so I could read the first little thing, if I can pull that up.
And it's wonderful to look at these questions, and this is an interesting text to do this with, but to look at the questions, which are very, very simple things, like, I don't know if you were going to the very beginning, but what is the sun? And so, and in many texts and yogic and Buddhist theory, the sun represents wisdom or intuition or the capacity to be in the present. And so that's like the very first question is, what is wisdom in a sense? What is sun and where does it live, which we may get back to later. And then it goes on and on with all of these questions that in a way are almost like koans, some of them, so that you answer them, but then they make you think rather than make you say, okay, I've got that answer, let me check that off.
So I didn't open this correctly, but this is just an early question. The Yaksha asked, what, O king, is said to be knowledge? What is tranquility or peace? What is mercy or karuna? And what is called simplicity? I should actually get the text because I only got... And Yudhishthira said, true knowledge is that of, and this translation says divinity, but it is actually of awareness. And tranquility is that of the heart. And so this is where peace is that in the heart. And mercy consists in wishing happiness for all beings. And then simplicity, I have to go and look in the text.
Yeah. That's sweet.
Yeah, and it's like a beautiful teaching of mindfulness, awareness, but most importantly, of interconnection with others, of loving other beings, because that's what, if you really look closely at the situation, you'll find all beings there. So it's not just, oh, I'm alone in the forest, but you'll find, we're all here. And so it's this strong, it's not just a theoretical connection, but it's like, and that's what the yoga is, the linking of beings together. Okay.
You want me to do the end?
Oh, the end. Yeah, I should actually open it'll take just 2 seconds. Yeah, text. Yeah. So the whole Mahabharata, it's, be careful.
And then,
Oh, there it is.
okay.
Let me get that one. 120 questions. So, mercy consists in wishing happiness to all beings, and simplicity is just peace in your heart, or equanimity of your heart. And that's what simplicity is. And so that is also Occam's razor, that which is the simple answer is how things actually function. Okay. And then it goes on, and there's so many questions, and a lot of them have to do, you have to be...
While he's getting this, finding that spot, one of the ones that I love, and it's a really interesting text to look at and see what are the questions that seem to be the interesting ones that are posed. But the famous one, and many of you have heard it, is the idea of what is the most remarkable or amazing thing in the world. And the answer, of course, is that every day thousands and millions of sentient beings die, and yet each sentient being thinks this is not going to happen to me, or isn't really aware of the truth of impermanence within their own experience. So it's said this is one of the most amazing things because it is something that allows there to be deep insight and knowledge, wisdom into this process level of life itself, that it is impermanent. And by seeing that impermanence and being able to feel that you are not alone, to deeply feel in the open heart in the way this was described, there is the ability to not have fear at the time of thinking of death. And so that's why in many practices and many teachers, especially Buddhist teachers, recommend that part of your daily practice should be to to contemplate death. And there are different meditations and ways of doing that, from the Tibetan Book of the Dead or Atisha's 9 Contemplations, etc., where you can really think about the fact that impermanence is part of all of us. And to make that not scary, we feel this, and to make that feel process level rather than, oh, poor me, I'm going to die.
Right.
We drop into this
the
sense of
paradox.
Interconnectedness, which gives it ballast.
Yeah, and that impermanence is the quality of that which is in front of you.
Exactly.
And it's
glorious.
It is what the very definition of light and joy is. And it's like, oh no, impermanence. And so the yaksha, the yaksha is not really an easy character to deal with. Okay. And finally the king has answered all of these questions, and he said, oh, king, you've answered who is a real man and what possessed every kind of wealth, and that's someone who is merciful. And he said, therefore, we're going to bring one of your brothers back to life. And so you have to choose which of your brothers you're going to bring back to life. And this is like, oh no, And then Yudhishthira, let this one that is of darkish hue, whose eyes are red, who is tall like a large shallot tree, whose chest is broad and arms, let this Nakula Yaksha, get up. So Nakula is, I think, the second youngest brother, and he's a half brother, and so Nakula's mother is different than Yudhishthira's mother, and so and so and the Yaksha said, well, what about Bhimasena and Arjuna? And why then do you wish a step-brother to get on with life? How about your full brothers? And how can you forsake Bhima, who's strained, or Nakula and all these others? And what about Arjuna? He's worshipped by, people all over. And then the Yudhishthira said, and he said, if virtue is sacrificed, he that sacrificed it is himself lost. And so, better not to translate, but he doesn't want to give up a virtue or nobility or the sense of intrinsic dignity that we talk about, udana, which is actually the essence of which is compassion, and that gives you nobility. Like in yoga, we say, if you open up from the moon down through your heart, you'll feel compassion, and you'll see all beings in your heart, and that's the most important thing. So he says, and nonviolence is the highest virtue, and so I endeavor to practice that. Therefore, let Nakula revive. And so Nakula, my father had 2 wives, Kunti and Madri. Let both of them have children. And so he was thinking of Madri, who was the mother of this other, and he was feeling compassion for Madri. And Kunti, he was surviving. And so both mothers then are not going to be, and this is what I wish. And so as Kunti is to me, so is Madri. There's no difference between them in my eye. And I desire equally towards my mother. So he chose Nakula. And the Yaksha, probably smiling, but since abstention from injury, ahimsa is regarded or as higher than both profit and pleasure. Therefore, I'll let all your brothers.
Well,
and all the brothers.
And Yama who was the Yaksha, was the father of all of the brothers, right? And the husband of both of the wives.
Technically.
Yeah, technically. And so this was like this trick question in a sense, like, are we doing it just for ourselves?
Are we doing it for
Or are we doing it for the benefit of others? Which is, again, when we come back to this question for ourselves of how do we succeed in yoga, there is this ongoing tendency for all of us to want it to be something that we alone are benefiting from. But when we are able to have those flashes of moments where we really dip into this sense of pure awareness, into this sense of the intrinsic knowledge and wisdom that is held in the heart of each of us, symbolized by the sun, then the yoga goes to an entirely different level. So we all come to yoga with whatever, motive we come to it with. And we all learn, let's deal with working with our mind, working with our breath. But the step beyond that really starts to transform these practices into an embodied sense of freedom, of insight and wisdom that then does exactly what we were talking about at the beginning, where it penetrates beyond our own little sphere of ourselves into others, to be of service, not pounding people on the head with our ideas, but simply like that gaze that I exchanged with the man in the hospital, where there was no motive other than we're connected. We're part of this changing thing together, where we've dropped out of the content level of things and for a brief instant are in the process level. And that's when the yoga really feels, that's when we feel that we are, quote unquote, successful at it, when there's a sense of goodness that penetrates from outside of ourselves. And in many ways of thinking, in the Buddhist concept, the sun symbolizes wisdom, and wisdom is awareness, and it's said that it lives within each of us in the heart, that this wisdom is there if only the yaksha that we ourselves embody can step out of the way, can aid us in stepping out of the way to see pratyaksha, what is right within us, right before our eyes. And that's the story of what the yaksha does for us. It allows us to see what we already have, which is awareness symbolized by wisdom, goodness in the core of the heart.
Yeah, and it makes you look, or feel, or be aware. So looking being a metaphor for just pure awareness. And it doesn't, and still you might have many specific things that you need to tend to.
And you must.
Yeah.
So you have to operate on that level.
Mm-hmm.
It's just you have to let the scaffolding go.
Mm-hmm.
We were just in Hong Kong over the last few days, and it's such a dense city, and many cement buildings, and as they repair the buildings, they use bamboo scaffolding on the outside, which is fascinating. And when you look at the scaffolding we put around ourselves, which are our own conceptual ideas, that we can then repair this internal part of ourselves, just as they repair the buildings. And rather than making it, cement buildings or cement heart, you breathe life into it, and at the right moment, the scaffolding is put down. And there's freedom in that.
In the central and the middle path. So your inner yaksha.
Yeah.
And
there was a quote that we thought was beautiful in terms of this, so that as we practice, we remember this sense of wisdom, freedom, emptiness, kindness in the heart. We feel it, we embody it, and then we don't hold on to it. We give it away. And this beautiful quote by Thich Nhat Hanh, and I'm paraphrasing it because I couldn't find it, but it's something like sunlight, that meaning that which emanates from the core of our own hearts, the wisdom. It shines on the river of perceptions. In other words, the content level of what we are experiencing. And in that shining, those perceptions are transformed, and then we experience them peacefully. Rather than in this push and pull and tug. So sunlight shines on the river of perceptions, so they are transformed and we experience them peacefully. And by experiencing them ourselves peacefully from the inside out, that then emanates out. And that gives that freedom that we've been talking about. And so, putting all this aside, if you're wondering, well, is my yoga practice, is my meditation practice, is my chanting practice successful? The fact that you've shown up, it's successful. Step one. And step two, what starts happening the more you do it, is that you feel happier. You feel kinder. You feel more full of life. And that you behave more in nicer ways, so that you become nicer and you become happier, more stable. And then if those things, you're making any headway in those areas, not headway, that's the wrong way to put it. If you're experiencing moments of those, heartway, yeah, or just moments of them, then yeah, the practice is successful. If you're finding yourself looking for answers and not being comfortable with not knowing the answers to things, if you're finding yourself, wanting to be better, going into a yoga room and feeling a competitive edge the whole time, and then walking outside thinking, I nailed it. I was the one who was the best in the class.
You be mindful of that?
Yeah. Then if you're mindful of that, then you're on the right path to being successful. And when you can let go of the term successful, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Shall we?
Sure.
So we were going to do...
We ran way over.
Oh, we were going to do the... there's another Upanishad where there's... there are a couple where they're yakshas, and one is the Kena Upanishad. And the very end of the Kena Upanishad, they have this chant, the Shantipat, or chant, which is totally non-sectarian, and it's neither theistic nor atheistic, it's just straight on practical. And probably a few of you know it. And I'll translate it quickly. It goes, Sahana Vavatu, may we together be protected. Sahano Bhunaktu, may we together enjoy or eat. Bhunaktu can be eating, but it's also like doing things. Sahaviryam karabhavahe, and may we with great virya, which is courage and dignity, work together. So there's some work to do. There's more work to do than you. So may we work together with great virya, courage. Tejasvi navadi tam astu, and may we do things with great tejas, and may this produce great tejas, which is initially heat when we start to work together, but it becomes brilliance. So tejas becomes light, but it's kind of like burning at first. Mavidvishavahai, and that's the last line. And may we not, as a result of this, really fight with each other. And so that is, and so it's. We'll chant it.
Yeah.
Okay. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanao Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvi Navaditam Astu Mavid Vishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Peace.
peace. Thank you, Yakshas.
Thank you, everyone.